Hello. Welcome, everyone, to Woven Today. It is so good to have everyone here. And just so you know, and Charlie, do you have some in your hand? Hold up your plate, Charlie. There's cake in the back. So everyone who wants cake, there's cake. Sarah does not want to take any home, so please go grab cake and enjoy. Just want to put that out there. So today, a good friend of mine and John's is here, Matt Cessna. So he and I will be talking just about life and queerness and all the fun stuff. Yeah, drama. That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah. Next week, actually, and thank you, Danny, for creating these beautiful letters, we'll have five different range of the queer people here talking with John. So that'll be a lot of fun. So look forward to. And then on the 30th, instead, because we're all going to be tired after Pride, we're just going to watch the movie Birdcage over in the fellowship hall. So no actual service, but if you want to watch the movie Birdcage, please feel free to join us. And book club, if you are interested in Buddhism at all, on Monday nights at Panera, they're talking about living Buddha, living Christ. So that's it on the way of announcements. So we just want to say a special welcome to all of you, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, your views on church, your views on God. Your skepticism is welcome because you belong as you are. So we say welcome today. Here you go, John.
It's good to have Michelle here.
I said your biggest fan is here.
There may or may not be a balloon Spanish in your office.
Father's Day.
I decided it means.
Welcome everyone for my part too. And we're going to do a liturgy today. And your part will be this. We will not be owned. This is for Juneteenth, is what this is about. So when I say, holding memory, we proclaim, you say, we will not be owned. Holding memory, we proclaim, will not be moved. God of broken chains, on this day we remember. We do not know how it felt when the word of freedom came, what release was felt in the bodies of those who made us, what disbelief, what joy, what sorrow. But would you allow some echo of it to resound in our bodies today? We gather not just to honor freedom wrung, but in protection and continuation of it. Let it resound clearly as we join voices on this day. We pray peace and deep rest for our ancestors, those who labored without agency over their bodies for generations, and those who chose the sea. Holding memory, we proclaim, we will not be owned. We marvel at the dreamers, those who clung to an imagination for liberation regained, those who fought, strategized, organized. Holding memory, we proclaim, we will not be owned. Thank you for those who became our own historians, who preserved culture in whispers by moonlight, transmitting song and name. Holding memory, we proclaim, we will not be owned. We grieve for the brutality of families alienated from one another, the daughter ripped from her mother's breast, sister torn from brother. And we honor all the ways our people form new family bonds, rising to nurture children and impart tenderness on those the oppressed sought to harden. Strengthen our own bonds now, that the invisible thread stretching between each holy black soul would be fortified by compassion and intergenerational healing. Holding memory, we proclaim, we will not be owned. God, we pause for every body broken, bruised, and lynched. There are stories that reside in our bodies, both known and unknown to us. Keep us near to our own flesh, that we may protect one another from the brutality of white capitalism. May the rest and care that were denied to our ancestors be found in us today. Holding memory, we proclaim. And this joy in us, this durable, defiant joy, would you shield it from the mouth of despair? Remind us there's no void that can match the strength of our collective hope. Keep our songs alive, every verse, every dance. May our humor survive as we play and laugh. Show us the many faces of joy, that all who dare encounter it will find themselves at home. Holding memory, we proclaim. Now may the same God who spoke to Harriet make the sound of liberation clear as night to us. May the divine hold us in the same holy darkness that protected our ancestors on the journey. And as we remember, may they shield us from despair, knowing that our story is more than pain. Ours is the story of dignity. Let us reclaim it. Holding memory, we proclaim. And with me, inhale, liberation is ours. And exhale, God, teach me the sound of freedom. Inhale, liberation is ours. Exhale, God, teach me the sound of freedom. Amen.
And we would be remiss if we didn't sing a song or two. Yeah, we're just doing one. That was written by our friends of color. So we've done this first one here before. So if you catch on to it, you can go ahead and sing along. Blessing and honor, glory and power be unto the Ancient of Days. From every nation, all of creation, bow before the Ancient of Days. And every tongue in heaven and earth shall confess your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne. In worship you will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient of Days. Blessing and honor, glory and power be unto the Ancient of Days. From every nation, all of creation, bow before the Ancient of Days. And every tongue in heaven and earth shall declare your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne. In worship you will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient to the Ancient of Days, for none can compare to your matchless worth. Sing to the Ancient of Days, and every tongue in heaven and earth shall confess your glory. Every knee shall bow at your throne in worship. You will be exalted, O God, and your kingdom shall not pass away, O Ancient of Days. And kingdom shall reign over all the earth. Sing to the Ancient of Days, for none can compare to your matchless worth. Sing to the Ancient of Days. And I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never failed me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. And every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father, known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. If we could just sing this chorus together. Sing, God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Oh God, you're so good. God, you're so good. And God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Lord Jesus, we thank you that even if we're not able to sing those words without some type of hesitation or sometimes resentfulness, that even when we don't trust, when we don't even believe, you are good enough to love us still. And so, Lord, I pray that those who are confident in singing that will continue to see you work in ways that maybe others don't. And Lord, I pray for the people who can't sing that, who won't sing that. Lord, we thank you that you can take it. You can take our questions. You can take all the things that we could possibly think as awful and as as needed. As valid as whatever we feel you actually feel it too. And so, Lord, I pray for all of us today to see some type of good. It doesn't have to be in your name. It doesn't have to be in music. It doesn't even have to be with anything that we learn today. It can and should be just in the face of our neighbor. So, Lord, we thank you that you are good and that good can only mean good. We thank you, Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Derek. I love that. It kind of gave me vibes with both of us sitting here of like when we were in John's program. I'm like, this is bringing back vibes. This is weird. But what really triggered me was Matt walks in and goes, "Oh, he's a good singer." And I was like, and we're back. We have arrived back in the time. So just so everyone knows, this is my dear friend, Matt Cessna, who some of you know, some of you don't know. We have been friends. I actually met you before I met John, before I met Andrew, anyone who you all regularly know with. I knew Matt Cessna first, and you were the first, and I didn't know this at the time, but you were my first queer friend, where we genuinely talked about it, and we literally went there, and you were the only person that would do that with me during that period of my life. So thank you. So I've done enough talking, so how about you take over and just tell us a little bit about your life growing up and how that was.
Sure, I'll give you the Spark Notes version. I grew up in the Holy City, aka Wilmore. uh, in a very evangelical background, maybe like some of you as well, and definitely knew I was attracted to the male sex from a very young age. I would say, like in elementary school, I knew. I know
Yeah.
different people have different ages where maybe they have those feelings, but for me, it was elementary school. And I have a kind of core memory of my grandfather was a pastor, and my grandparents are fairly conservative. And I remember my grandma telling me once, if you ever feel this way, just know that that's a sin. And so when you're like an elementary school age kid, that gets locked in, and the self-loathing begins at an early age.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I never heard that growing up. My first queer activity was when I was 5 years old, just so everyone understands. It was when I was 5. And I was still more attracted to women at that point. But my first queer activity was 5. And I did this big confessional to my parents, and they were like, "You're 5 years old, you're fine." And that was a conversation. "You're 5 years old, you're fine. Don't worry about it."
Wow.
So it's so different than yours. It's
Huh.
interesting.
Yeah, that is different. And I never had like a physical experience with anyone of any gender until I was an adult. So I just kind of internalized all of this, and of course didn't talk about it. Like many people, I think there's a shared experience where there were nights spent, in bed crying. I had this stuffed bulldog that I just I think I held on to that thing until I was in high school, admittedly, because it was like my comfort to have this thing that I had projected, it could sympathize with me, and it was my only confidant, was this object, this human-made object, but it was better than nothing, and that's what I had. And I definitely remember moments where I think when you internalize your sexuality in that way from a young age, out of fear, you're internalizing a core part of just who you are. And so there were ways in which I think it would come to the surface that maybe I eventually learned how to shove that back down. So I remember I was in 7th grade, and does anyone remember those Scholastic book fairs? I mean, if you're like a 2000s child.
Absolutely.
So I remembered loving gardening, whether it be vegetable gardening or flower gardening. We'd go spend a month every summer growing up with my grandparents in Pennsylvania, and my grandmother always took pride in her garden. And to this day, I was at my grandparents today, because now they live here, and I can't walk by the flower beds and be like, "Oh, I gotta weed this." And so I was doing that earlier today. And I remember buying a book about flower gardening in the 7th grade. You wait for the order to be delivered. And so in English class, my homeroom teacher was also my English teacher, Miss Stewart, who does anyone have a core experience of your English teachers kind of being your safe people growing
I
up?
do.
Anyone else?
Yes, I actually have one. That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, and one of them's right here with red hair.
Yay.
But one of my earliest ones, Miss Stewart, Pat was passing out the books, and there were some boys who definitely were very homophobic from an early age sitting around me, and started teasing me because I got a book on flower gardening, which, that is also a core memory. And I remember just sitting there quietly, and I was very shy. Probably up until high school, I think I started to come out of my shell a little bit, but I was very much a shy child, and that was regularly written onto my elementary school report cards. Matt likes to play with himself at recess. Not that way.
Good save.
Maybe by myself.
There's no going back in the closet after that one.
If that did happen, I've blocked that out of my memory. But I've looked into my baby book and seen that was written year after year. and I didn't mind it either. I created my own kind of fantasy world. I was pretty imaginative, and I could entertain myself. Not in that way. I'm gonna stop before I dig myself into a deeper hole. And oh no, someone just interpreted that statement too.
Yes. Yes.
My mind was not going there. But anyway, I remember that moment and realizing, okay, like, and I remember so when we went from 5th grade to 6th grade, I had some. If you grow up in Wilmore, you have a childhood of comings and goings, and so you kind of get attuned to that at an early age. So I would get close to people, and then they would move. And some of them would move back because their dad decided to get his doctorate degree at Asbury Seminary, so I moved back to Wilmore, and lo and behold, it's like, oh, my friend that lived in Africa for 4 years is now back. And you're always the one left behind, and it's kind of harder to be the one left behind than watching people going all the time. And so a lot of my friends just happened to move away at the end of my 5th grade year, going into 6th grade. A lot of my male friends, and so 6th grade, guess who I sat at the lunch table with? Anyone want to guess? Yeah. The girls, because the girls were nice. And so the optics, I think, as a child, I didn't become aware of it until I was teased about it. And so the optics, I think, middle school is awful for a lot of people that are queer, I think, because you're learning about yourself, and part of what you're learning about yourself is due to other people highlighting what they see as flaws within you. And so you begin to think of yourself as being flawed from a young age.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because the first time I was called a faggot was in middle school. So, and I had a similar experience to you because where I grew up, and there is a naval base there, so my friends all left as well because they were stationed in based upon whatever was going on in the Navy, and then they would leave. And so the people I was closest with as a young child were always gone. And the ones that were the left were the ones who dehumanized me in every possible way because they understood something about me that I didn't understand about myself, and that's that I was different. And I internalized that probably similar to you as a very bad thing. So I also hung out with a lot of females because they didn't demonize me. Yeah. I felt myself. Yeah. So isn't that an interesting parallel?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you went through something similar too.
I had not thought about that in years, and you said that, I'm like, oh shit, that tracks. That's the funny thing. So we flash forward, and you go to UK first, right?
Yeah. So I like a lot of queer people, was more of a creative type. I think in high school I started to realize that I enjoyed literature, and I enjoyed, Miss Moon, Edie Moon here, convinced me to be in my first musical in high school, and I ended up really enjoying that. And then I think there's that, you find that I think arts somewhat feel like the island of misfit toys. All the kind of maybe neurodivergent or people that are kind of on the fringes are drawn into those creative spaces. So, and my main talent that I felt like people were recognizing was singing, and so, which I know gay, singers are a dime a dozen too, and so I felt that I was like, oh, this is the one thing that I'm good at, and even straight people affirm this in me and recognize that, people that once bullied me were now commenting, oh, I love your voice, and that felt very good to be recognized in a positive manner rather than a negative manner. So, that was a star I clung to, and then ended up going to the University of Kentucky on a scholarship to study singing.
Yeah, and you were there first semester, and I remember that because you introduced me to everyone from UK, like right away. You're like, hey, come to this opera with me. Hey, come to this thing with me. Yeah. So you would go to Asbury semester 2.
Yes,
right?
I didn't even make it a full semester. I remember Dr. McCorvey, who was the head of the vocal department at UK at the time, sitting all the freshmen down and looking at all of us and saying, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else, then do it, and you need to change your major.
Wow.
And so
No pressure.
which I think was nice of him, honestly, because the arts can it can eat you alive if you don't have the inner strength to really persevere through the hardships that are innate in the arts, which are often outlying reasons that people love the arts, but they also don't really want to patronize or support them on the reverse.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting because it's different, right? Because
Yeah.
you found a way through arts growing up, and
Yeah.
then it becomes this thing,
Yeah.
and it is hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pull off as a career and as a profession, but it's also the escapism.
And I think when I'm contemplating that, I think a lot of that comes from, I was sticking to the one thing that I felt people positively recognized, and I made that in a large way a core part of my identity without really cultivating other qualities or recognizing other positive qualities that as a human I may have possessed. And as we all do, we're all not one-trick ponies, if that makes sense. And so when Dr. McCorvey said that, I started to seriously think about, what do I want out of life, and why am I doing this, and why am I a music major, and what are the reasons, and are they good reasons? And I think when I really was honest with myself, the main reason I personally was a music major was because I think really rooted in pride. When I think about it, it was I liked the positive feedback. But I also, not totally, because when I think about it too, I liked bringing joy to people too. So I think you have to recognize where something can be kind of like a two-sided coin. There can be beauty and good in it, but we have to be cognizant of the potential, bad motives that can come with that too.
Yeah, because it is an endorphin boost. Like, when you do musical stuff, as someone who has absolutely refused to do anything musical since 2014, I do miss those endorphins. I will not lie about it. I miss them. But there is also, and some of this is demanded, and it's not really the point of what we're talking about today, so I'm just going to put my toe on it and drop it. There's a lot of ego that's required in that to go to a certain level. And that's something that, ego can be a good thing, and it can also really be a bad thing and can destroy you, and you can miss people and human connection and stuff. So that's kind of the complicated part about what you're talking about. But you stayed in music when you first went to Asbury, right?
Yeah. I switched to music ed because I thought back about, I can take this, along that same line of thought. I thought about, how can I take this and make it something where I feel like I can, maybe give back. And I had thought about teachers growing up, and I think for a lot of us that's probably the case, teachers being like our safe spaces, our support networks, our inspirations, and I always liked the idea of that I could maybe become that for future generations. And so I think that's why I pivoted and then switched to music ed. And then I'll never forget doing a practicum experience and realizing that not all children enjoy music. And I had blinders on and refused to acknowledge that, and not all children enjoy music class. And I realized this, I would rather walk across hot coals, I think, daily than do this. And so, but I liked the kids still. I was figuring out, like, well, I don't know if I want to teach music, but I put the whole degree on the back burner. And then I did the worship arts major for a period with lovely.
Most people don't know, I also started in music ed, and I didn't get to the practicum experience. It was the course load. Like, it was like pretty much going to be 4.5 years, best case scenario, full load the entire time. And I was like, fuck this. No way. That's too intense. Like, this is too hard, was basically what I conceded. Like, because I was only taking I think I had to take 15 or 16 credits my first semester. Yeah, it was a lot. And I thought that was a lot. And then they're saying, you're going to be at 18, maybe 19. I'm like, what? Oh, and you have to pay extra money if you take 19. I'm like, no, that's horrible. I'm not doing that to get 4.5 years. So that's why I dropped it on a thing. But then we both did worship arts together for a little bit.
Yeah, and I loved that period where, you know, I met so many great people as a worship arts major. Just a really great community of people that I felt like I could be honest with about the fact that I was attracted to men. But I was on a journey, and so at that stage in my journey, I was, you know, also what I would qualify as attempting to be an ex-gay. And my freshman year of college,
Yeah,
I
you did do that. I forgot.
yeah, I got connected with a local Exodus International ministry. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Exodus International. They no longer exist, and rightly so.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, I hopped on that train as it was about to crash and burn, believe it or not.
I totally forgot
Yeah,
about that.
and I went to a local chapter, like a support group, and I'll never forget. It was me. The leader was a lesbian woman, and like three men that were like over 40 years old, and then there was 18-year-old me. So not the most comfortable space to be in, to say the least. And I didn't go to many of the support meetings, but that was even when I was still at UK. So that was before I went to Asbury. And then I transferred to Asbury, and then that summer I went to my first Exodus International conference. So they had an annual conference. I went in 2009. At that time, it was in Chicago at Wheaton, which is a Christian higher learning institution. And I'll never forget going to the first session and there being a protest around their chapel there, and people like waving rainbow flags and them like ushering us in. And I remember thinking at that moment we were in that chapel space, feeling threatened almost by these people that were outside. And it's funny at this stage of life, kind of being like, wow, you really hated yourself like that much. But I also am really thankful for that experience, and this is why. I met so many other people that were like me. So it was almost one of the first moments where I felt like, oh, there's other gay people that also feel like they have a genuine relationship with God, and they're just trying to figure out how to reconcile these two parts of who they are. And long story short, now, what is this, 15 years later since this conference, I've maintained relationships with a lot of those people that I met there, and most of us are just out and affirming now. Some of them work at churches, so we all kind of have evolved in our faith, I think in a healthy way since then.
Yeah. Well, it's important to talk about, like, there was no same-sex marriage. That didn't exist the entire time. And every conversation you and I had, and we had a lot of just you and I talking about our sexuality, what that meant for us, well, us and like the 30 other guys we knew all in that little sphere. And there didn't seem to be any kind of healthy way for us to do that. And so, I mean, it was literally an effort, and I've had to learn how to give myself grace for doing the best I can in that time, because the option was learn to like girls, which for me wasn't going to happen, or be celibate. Like, those are the only two options it felt like on the table.
Yeah.
I think we were hopeful. Maybe, I don't remember fully, but I think we were probably hopeful that something would be different when we were there, but we definitely didn't see it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I echo a lot of that. I was one of those, one of the ex-gays that was dating girls.
You did?
Yeah, in college.
Forgot.
I did tell girls, both the girlfriends I had, that I was attracted to men, as a disclaimer, before I dated them, so they were aware. Which I think, yeah, we could go on and on about that. But anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. So we go through this entire time, and I would say we had a conversation probably a year after we'd left Asbury, and we were both in a little bit more, how shall we say it, bitter place.
Yeah.
I think that would be safe to say, where we were much more like, is anything in faith even worth it?
Yeah.
At this point, my life blew up. You were so, so awesome to me during that time, and so loving to me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But probably because you were having the same similar questions, like, what do we do now?
Yeah. And I think for both Logan and I, while we were at Asbury, we knew there were a lot of family there, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
You heard through the grapevine.
Oh, heck yeah.
You knew via other ways. Some of them ended up marrying women. Some of them are now on a different, more similar trajectory. But I remember
Right.
sitting down with Logan one day and just like, I think I had my computer open and I just typed out like everyone.
We did.
We just like typed out everyone we thought of that was either, and the list was over 100 people.
Yeah,
And
there was
that
over 100. But
that
we
was just from our time. at
right,
Asbury.
but we labeled it to 30 for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was 100 that we guesstimated. This
Yeah.
is Matt and I were really
it
big
was
into
an
the gossip.
ample amount to say
Yeah,
the least.
yeah. Like we were definitely part of the gay gossip at Asbury.
There was
for
a
sure.
lot happening, I think, also in the years, like right after we graduated. Of course,
Yeah.
like gay marriage was legalized, and I think people's true colors of where they stood came out. I think it was easy for people to not really express their theological vantage of just existing as a queer person, I guess I should say. But some people came out, and I was really encouraged. I remember one of my friends from Asbury, her name is Molly Lopez, but I remember she was just an amazing ally on Facebook. There'd be certain people from Asbury saying things very disparaging, and she would like go to bat. And around that time, I think in the whole evangelical world, like voices like Rachel Held Evans were coming
that's right.
into like
That's right.
publishing books, and it's like, oh, there's other people that are just questioning this, what we've been taught our whole lives about what's right and wrong, and it's okay to ask questions, and why does my heart align with these people? And I'll never forget Molly, in response to one of a fellow Asburyan that shall not be named, her Facebook post was, I think you should remember this quote by Jen Hatmaker, and she said, it's all about the fruit, and you will know them by their fruit, and if the fruit is good, then how can that be sin? Because the fruit is bad coming from a viewpoint of being in a gay relationship is going to lead to death and despair and evil. That's not the fruit it shows. It shows joy. It shows happiness. It shows affirmation. People's mental health improves when they're affirmed in who they are. So why are we perpetuating rotten fruit in the church? That just is backward. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. If you can't see it, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I'm curious on your experience here because it's probably similar to mine. Asbury's stance when I was there was silence. You're gay, don't talk about it. That was their statement to me. Like, you can say that to us, we don't care, but don't tell people it's okay and we're just going to ignore you. Basically, our stance is ignore you. And I remember, because it's funny you mentioned Rachel Held Evans, she came to Asbury when we were there. Yeah, you were there too. She was there when you were there. And I only remember because she made so many professors mad. So I would go into so many classes, and they would give us a 10-minute rant about everything she said that was wrong. And, at this point, I'm just here for class, man. Like, let's move on. Like, that chapel was 2 hours ago. Like, move on. But it was interesting because back then they would have those kind of speakers like Rachel come. But post it becoming legal, that's when they put out a statement saying the opposite, which is where it's different for you and I than a lot of you who went to the Bury in that time. You guys had to go there under that horrific statement that they put out, basically demonizing you. And that's the horrendous part. We didn't have that. We didn't see an off-ramp, so we messed up a lot. Like, we were just trying to figure it out. We didn't ever see a world where we could be who we are. Yeah. And so we basically lived that whole time with masks on without even knowing it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that. I think when I look at my own experience, a big, another core moment in my life was I actually spoke in chapel. I think it was my sophomore year at Asbury. And I was really encouraged to do that by like our head of spiritual life for the student body. I can't remember her name, but she was delightful and I liked her a lot. And then also our campus chaplain too really encouraged me to do that. And so I felt like these people that I admire are telling me I should do this. So I did it, and it was scary. And I got up and I basically told a nutshell testimony that I was gay, but God was going to redeem that, and I was going to be straight. And people ate it up. Let me tell you, they laughed that
They did.
up.
No, they did. I mean,
They
they
could
talked
not
about it
get
for months.
enough.
They
And,
talked
like,
about it for months.
And I was like, okay, we're going to rip the Band-Aid off. So now everyone on campus knows that I am attracted to men, but under the condition that I'm not doing anything about it. So I actually don't remember getting any negative attention from that. People were only saying nice things to me, and people were very nice to me. And I put myself in a very dangerous position of I need to optically continue this image of that this is who I am, but internally that was not the case. And so in an unhealthy way, I found that I was still questioning a lot of things and had to do it in secret. And one thing about being a queer person that I think is very common for us is we get really good at lying, because we have to lie about, well, who we are from a young age if we
Right.
want to keep it secret. And so I work in a high school now, and it's really awesome to see that kids from a young age are just very confident if they are queer individuals. They're just they just feel so comfortable. If people say things to them, they stand up for themselves in a way that's very inspiring. Not to say all of them do that. I don't mean to generalize, but I don't remember ever seeing that when I myself was in high school, and I see it regularly at least the high school I'm at, which I work at Lafayette. So yes, I'm in a city school. I'm sure it's different in rural areas, but I always remembered having the mindset of I need to code switch. I need to be the type of person that people are not able to tell is attracted to the same sex. So while I was at Asbury over those few years after that, I wasn't necessarily, I did have a mask on, but it was probably a different mask than a lot of people had on, in the sense people knew I was attracted to men, but they didn't know that all of the mental anguish I was going on for the next several years while I was there.
Well, and I said that because I copied your playbook.
Yeah.
I copied your playbook, and it was so great. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Logan can like guys, but he's this really spiritual guy." But internally, I'm dying.
And I think a good thing that came from that. So I try to be, as much as I can, a view the glass half full type of person. And so I look at that moment, and where my initial feeling might be some regret that, oh, I wish I didn't say all those things in chapel, because over 1,000 people heard that. But I view it now as, the good thing was that some conversations started happening. People that also felt the same way maybe felt encouraged to start talking about those things. And since then, I've been very public that I don't feel that way anymore. And
Right.
I lost some Facebook friends from college, I think, over that, and that's fine. But I do think that, I think God can redeem anything. So,
Yeah, and you really went through figuring that out, because you really went the secular path. And I mean, for a period of time when we were interacting, we didn't talk about faith at all.
yeah, I think
We talked about science.
Yeah.
We talked about everything else other than
Except
faith,
faith.
because
Yeah.
neither of us wanted to touch it. We were
Yeah.
done with it. It in a lot of ways destroyed us.
Yeah, there were definitely some experiences in college and then post-college that caused me just to kind of step away from devoting energy into my spiritual life. I don't want to say that I completely ever at any point was like, I'm not a Christian anymore. I think I felt a bit jaded. And so
Yeah.
I stepped away. And I remember meeting some just secular gay, not at Asbury, friends locally. And I remember one of my older gay friends named Peter, going to a dinner party here in town with him. And he introduced me to some of the fellow attendees. And there was